are forging on with our topic of digital sovereignty. If you're sitting in the back and you'd like a seat, I'm happy to say there are some free in the very front. So don't be shy, I promise I won't bite. I'm going to hand over now to my colleague Natalia from Bitkom, and she's going to take it from here. Natalia?
Yes. Thank you very much, Sarah. It's really a pleasure for me to be here, and it's an honor for me today to discuss the subject of core technologies such as cloud computing and semiconductors in the context of digital sovereignty. And of course, I'm not going to do this alone. We have invited great experts to help me with this. And I would like to invite you to welcome our first speaker, who will join us remotely, and she will give a first impulse on the subject of semiconductors. Please welcome Christin Eisenschmid. She is a Vice President and General Manager of Intel Germany, and there she is responsible for definition and execution of the Intel ecosystem strategy here in Europe and for enabling business growth together with business groups of Intel and strategic partners. And she's also a managing director of Intel Germany, and she joined Intel in 2011 with the acquisition of Infineon Technologies' wireless solution business. And before joining Intel, she was a CFO of the wireless solution groups in Infineon, and she was also in various different roles during her career in various different leadership positions in finance, sales, supply chain, and operations at Infineon and Siemens Semiconductors. Welcome, Christin. It's a pleasure to have you here. The stage is yours now.
Introduction and welcome from my side. Unfortunately, I cannot be physically with you here today, but thanks to digitalization, it's possible to do it remotely. So the title of my short speech I choose is Building Europe's Digital Future, Accelerating the European Ecosystem in Semiconductors. So not sure if I can move us to the next page. So we can see that the strategic importance of semiconductors is increasing continuously. We call it now an enabler for the digital transformation. And the digital transformation is progressing rapidly. It's now affecting all areas of our private life and our professional life. Whether it's education, whether it's communication, whether it's mobility, healthcare, automation, or the necessary infrastructure for energy, communication, and compute. So digitalization is everywhere, and semiconductors are a key enabler for the digitalization. But now when we look at the status quo and about the manufacturing footprint for semiconductors, this is a little bit concerning, because what we see is that the majority of the semiconductors get produced and manufactured in Asia Pacific and in China. So more than 80% come from that region. Europe is accounting only for 10%. And this has not always been like that. If we go back to the 90s, Europe accounted for 40%. So how did this happen? The reason is that the governments in Asia and in China, they recognized at an early stage the strategic importance of this technology, and they heavily subsidized and funded this industry. So now the COVID crisis and the general shortage for semiconductors we are currently experiencing has painfully shown the vulnerabilities we have. And this trend is also being increased by the current geopolitical trends towards more regionalization. So this is a clear call of action for all of us, and specifically for the EU and the EU Commission, who picked this up and who have set out in order to ensure the strategic supply of semiconductors going forward, and also to reduce the vulnerabilities going forward. So in February this year, Ursula von der Leyen announced the new EU Chips Act, which is not only addressing the manufacturing capacities and the capabilities in Europe for semiconductors, which the EU Commission wants to double by end of this decade, but it's also set out to make sure we have the necessary design capabilities, we have the necessary research activities all connected in order to make sure that we will remain competitiveness and we have all the elements available that keep Europe self-determined and able to compete with other countries. So at Intel, we are fully committed to support the agenda of the EU, and by investing in order to ensure that we can supply our products going forward to European customers and ensure that we can design products jointly with these customers and manufacture them in a European fab. So the biggest part of our European investment and strategy is a so-called mega fab for advanced semiconductors that we are planning to build in Magdeburg in Germany. It's a significant investment, and we are planning on hiring 3,000 people, highly qualified people that work in the fab to manufacture the products and the semiconductors of the future. Now, this is all good, but it is not sufficient. What we need to do in addition is to look at the entire value chain, not only at manufacturing, but also make sure we have the right research programs in place together with the research institutes and research partners to make sure that we build up the design capabilities, to make sure we are equipped to design the most innovative products that we can manufacture in Europe. Also the right software and software developing tools and talent in place. So this all is a huge effort, and we definitely cannot do this alone, but it requires a truly concerted approach. It requires all the actors in the European semiconductor industry to work this together. And by all actors, I'm just listing here a few. It's the governments, it's the research institutes, it's academia and universities, our vast university landscape, it's our customers. We need to work with small and medium enterprises, and as we heard before from Judith Gerlach, the startup community is also very important, because they will be very important going forward in order to drive innovation based on the latest technology and with the support of the entire semiconductor ecosystem. So it takes all of us to win, and it is a joint effort. But I think there is a lot of commitment and a lot of readiness, and happy to discuss this now on the panel with the other panelists. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christin, for this input into Intel's European strategy. And as you rightfully mentioned, we do need a concentrated effort from all the players along the value chain, and that's why we invite today speakers who will bring their perspectives from different sectors of the value chain. And I would like to invite here on stage Falk Weinreich. He is a general manager in Central Europe for OVHcloud. And since December 2019, he has been active in this role. And OVHcloud is a European leading cloud provider. And in this position, he oversees the business and development in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. And previously, he was a senior vice president of sales and marketing at Call Data Center Services. Welcome, Falk. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
And my next guest is Andreas Nitze, who is a country manager of ASML in Germany. Welcome, Andreas. And ASML is one of the world's leading producers for microchip manufacturing equipment. You might have never heard about this company, but it's actually a very important and one of the most important players in the semiconductor value chain. And Andreas joined ASML in 2020 together in this role following the acquisition of Berliner Glas. And before, he held various positions, and he was also a CEO of Berliner Glas since 2002. Welcome.
Thank you for the invitation.
Yes, so I would like to start maybe with you, Falk. And so OVHcloud is a leading and rising European player in the area of cloud computing technologies, and you also place a great emphasis on digital sovereignty. Can you please maybe elaborate? How do you understand it? What does it exactly mean for you?
No, thank you for the question, Natalia. So sovereignty has many aspects. And I like to take on also what Christine says about the Europeanness, about strengthening Europe, because we believe there are three dimensions to sovereignty. There's the economic dimension, the commercial one. Does your service provider lock you in? What about reversibility? Can you consume in, but can you go out without any penalties? The second part would be the technology about sovereignty. So what about using open source technologies? Why not go open source instead of being locked in with technologies, property, intellectual property, which you can't change? And the third dimension is the legal one. Also a political one, because what about the Cloud Act? What about other legal obligations you have in other countries and other regions? So we are European, we are strongly embedded into the Europeanness. Our values are compliant with the GDPR rules. Hence, for us, this is super important. Sovereignty is down to our values, down to our DNA.
Thank you very much. So you mentioned there are different aspects of sovereignty, and there is this aspect of technology sovereignty. And ASML, as I mentioned, is one of the key players in semiconductor area in Europe. So, Andreas, how does ASML understand the technological sovereignty in this field? And its role in achieving it, let's say.
ASML's role, you mean? In the ASML's role, ASML's role. Okay. First of all, we very much welcomed Intel's commitment, bold statement, bold commitment to support the European ecosystem in semiconductor. But as Christine has mentioned and made it clear, it's not just about investing in a fab. It's much, much more. It's a whole system. It's a whole process. ASML, for those of you that don't know ASML, we are producing one critical machine called a litho machine, with which you define what generation of chip you manufacture, you can manufacture, and how you follow a certain law called Moore's Law. Intel is one of our customers. So for ASML, it is not that we think we will sell now more. We sell to Intel whether we ship to Asia or to the US or to Europe. It's just about shipping costs. It's more important to understand that we see it as a clear focus on Europe, and it is always good if you are a world-leading supplier that in your ecosystems, where you live, where you do the R&D, where you produce, the machines are produced in the Netherlands. It is good if you are in a healthy environment, in a healthy ecosystem. So our contribution is to educate the politicians a little bit, to help, to support all the commitments from other players in that field as well, and to make it really a European effort as a whole. That's our. I think this is our role.
Thank you very much. So you mentioned, Christin, in your presentation that supply chain, value chain of semiconductor production is global, and although there is this trend for regionalization, it's still we would not get everything here in Europe. So also, like you mentioned, Andreas, you will still have clients in Asia, and you, as an end user, Falk, you will still get your components from around the world. So why do you, Christin, think that it's important that we build this ecosystem here in Europe? And can you just describe what are the main components of this ecosystem to be resilient?
Well, I think we've relied for a long period of time on our good relationships with Asia and good relationships with the US. And now I think the recent developments have shown that it's maybe not safe or not secure to keep relying on it and not take our destiny in our own hands. If we assume that this regionalization trend will continue and semiconductors and tech will become almost a weapon for these countries to compete with, we need to focus on the region, and we need to make sure that we are self-sufficient in the region, and we leverage all the strengths and the capabilities there. And I think there is huge capabilities in Europe regarding research, regarding the design engineering. It's just all not tailored to produce the innovation and also manufacture innovative products going forward in Europe. So I think we need to tie together now what we have already and strengthen this. And then the goal is to really work with our customers to jointly design innovative products for the future and to get the entire ecosystem end-to-end aligned to that and behind us. And I have to say I'm surprised about the consensus and the positive and the support we are getting on this, whether it's ASML and our equipment suppliers, whether it's research institutes like Fraunhofer, IMEC. So I think everybody seems to have the same vision and understanding. One specific point I'd like to point out is talent. So we all have a significant concern about availability of talent going forward, because as we build this ecosystem, digitalization is increasing, we are all looking for the same skilled and qualified people. So I think it takes a joint effort too to make sure we create this talent pipeline in Europe.
Thank you very much. Falk, so the OVHcloud is clearly one of the players within this big value chain. So how does control of infrastructure and hardware of cloud computing plays in your technological sovereignty strategy?
Well, thank you for the question. So yeah, it's super important, and also the supply chain is super important for us, because we are quite unique as a service provider, cloud service provider, to actually produce, assemble the servers ourselves. We build racks, we provide the data centers, we even own the property and use water cooling technologies. So the whole value chain is integrated, which gives certain advantages like quality of service, no finger pointing. Commercial aspects, obviously. We can generate margin for the long term, be a sustainable player for the benefit of the customers. And because we use water cooling technology, we are also eco-friendly. Actually, the most eco-friendly data center we operate in Europe. But we are all dependent on our supply chain. If my peers here on the panel are not delivering anymore the service I need, then I have a problem. And we all absolutely compete around talents, because I'm using so much of the value chain, from producing servers to service provider of PaaS solutions. We need lots of different talents in the industry, which we all basically are looking for as well. So it's a tough market, but fast Europeanness, also to produce a service in Europe and to provide the data centers in Europe, is fundamental to our principles. Again, to stick to the GDPR, to stick to our European values.
Thank you. And I think you, all of you, at one point and another, mentioned that we all have to work together to really have benefit of all these big projects like the one that Intel plans. And Andreas, how do you see, what is, you mentioned already there is a big potential of this project, but how do we make sure that we use this potential, and what do we need to make this collaboration between different players successful?
Thank you very much. Good question. Before I answer that, I would like to make a little point in addition to Christine. Let's be, and support what she said, let's be very clear. The semiconductor industry in the past 20 years went through a dramatic change. 20 years ago, a chip was basically, not really, but very similar to a commodity product. There were many suppliers. You had an investment of about 2 billion for a wafer fab. These are the production sites where where the chips are produced. Today, only a few are left. Why? Because the latest generation wafer fab, you've just seen it, 17 billion. So over the course of the past 10 years, a lot of companies dropped out. They could not pay. They did not have the money. They did not have the economical reasoning to do that. So we are basically left with a few companies. You have seen Asia is very strong with that. In the US, the development, the design is very strong. So the whole market has come to is left with a few players, which are, and now it comes, sometimes in a difficult geopolitical situation. Sometimes it's just earthquakes and fires, etc. And the whole chain is now not enough resilient. And this is a chance also for Europe, because if we do not get our chips, we will have a lot of problems with our industries. And as this is a growing market, this is a very good opportunity to help to make this chain more resilient and to take it to the advantage of Europe. Now to your question, how can we do that? I think the key word here is alignment. We need to align our forces through the whole process chain to make sure that we all move in the right direction. I know this is very easily said. Saying yes, we do this means at the same time to say no to other options. Yeah? For instance, some people say we just need to invest in 5 nanometer chips. That would mean there's not enough money left to invest in chips, chip design, chip manufacturing for 20, 30, 40 nanometers. However, for instance, the automobile industry is mainly using these kind of chips, 20, 30, 40 nanometers. So we have to make conscious decisions, bring everybody at the table, discuss what we do and what we do not do. And in that sense, Intel is a great player in that, because Intel covers a lot of the open questions and can contribute to make this a synchronized effort. I would say it's a synchronized, aligned effort. And this needs talking and alignment between the players. And in that sense, it's very helpful that Intel has made the commitment to contribute.
Thank you very much. It sounds already like an action plan.
So we are on our way.
Can you maybe share a bit your perspective? What would be your, maybe, what are the main steps? How do we can approach this idea of digital and technology sovereignty from the perspective of the
Yeah, I think it really starts with the investments in the support of also of the political landscape. So without investing in utilities, in big fabrication lines, like for the chip industry, having something in Europe, having it faster for the European players, this is super important. It should strengthen our capabilities to supply the industry in Europe. But also it needs, I think, also political support in the sense to give the right frame. Just think about the mobile industry from some decades ago, where people couldn't use the mobile phone number to go from one supplier to the other. And only because there was a framework, a political steer to make that happen, people are now free to move. And things are not that easy in the cloud spectrum, because in the cloud you have lots of systems which can't actually talk to each other, which is also commercially locking you in. So people can't just move from one cloud to the other that easily, like, for example, your mobile number in the mobility industry. So these need support to help digital sovereignty for the end user, for the benefit of the customer.
Thank you. Yeah, Christin, maybe then a last question for you to give like a bigger picture. So Intel is not a European player, so what is your strategy to really integrate in this ecosystem? We spoke a bit that there are different aspects of it, but how do we make sure that it's a really all European benefit from Intel projects now in Magdeburg and also all over Europe? How do you plan to actively collaborate with the European existing players here?
Well, we already have very strong relationships with existing European players, and ASML is a very prominent example here for a long partnership that has been successful over the last years. So we believe in a transatlantic collaboration, that is our ideal understanding, that we work together across the Atlantic to strengthen our capabilities, but we are also prepared, if this doesn't work, to focus more on Europe in isolation. So we have existing strong customer relationships who are looking right now how to make their supply chains more secure. So I think it is in the end working with our customers to help them to make the supply chains more secure, to identify second sources, to make sure that we are prepared for any type of crisis that will materialize, or a continuing trend of regionalization and decoupling, how we call it. So I think we want to build on these relationships, but of course also create new relationships with the entire ecosystem. Think how we can make the technology more accessible to small and medium enterprises, to startups who don't have the financial means in order to build for themselves the infrastructure. So we think this is important for innovation. And a last very important point that was mentioned before. So the debate in Europe is always, do we need advanced semiconductors, and is there enough demand? And it is correct that right now higher nodes are probably fully sufficient for automotive and for other sectors. But these investments are huge, and when the first products will come out of our Magdeburg factory, it will be 2027. So I think we need to prepare for the future and for the products of the future. And we still have time to do that, but we need really the ecosystem partners in Europe.
Right.
To establish this, because if we sit back and say we don't need advanced technology, then the other countries, the other regions, they will make sure they have the technology available when the demand for these technologies will pick up.
Right.
Yeah.
So we need to think of the future, share this as a future vision, and then all jointly activate and leverage the strengths that we have in Europe.
Yeah, thank you very much. I hope that with this discussion we could set one of the stones to continue this discussion with different players of the ecosystem and really have this vision for the future altogether. And with this, I would like to thank the participants. Thank you, Andreas. Thank you, Christin. And thank you, Falk.
Thank you.
The future is now. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.